We need to talk. Seriously. Are you using gouache like watercolor? Gouache is very versatile and you can use it almost any way you like, but you need to get the right consistency at the right time. So today I want to show you the do's and don'ts about gouache consistency. Bonjour, I'm Cécile, a French artist, and my mission is to help you becoming a better artist. And I hope to do it with this video today when I will show you the do's and don'ts about gouache consistency. This is crucial if you want to use gouache properly. So please grab your supplies and paint along with me. It's not enough to watch a video. It won't do good for your brain and your muscle memory. You really need to practice so it gets really clear to you. So grab your supplies, paint along with me, and let me know in comments if the video is helpful. The first thing, if you want to use a creamy consistency with gouache, is to use gouache in tubes and not in pans. Because pan is just dried gouache, and when you reactivate it, you won't never ever get the creamy consistency. To get the right consistency, it really depends on the brands and in each brand in the colors as well. So you have to feel it on your brush. How is the mix behaving? Is it very sticky? Is it fluid enough so you can spread the paint evenly on the paper? It's really difficult to give you an exact recipe. It's really a feeling, and also it depends on where you're living and what the weather is. It should be creamy enough that you can cover the white of the paper. So this tree is in the background. I begin with it and I want to have an even coverage. So I have a quite thick paint, we could say cream consistency or think toothpaste. And I have enough paint that it makes a little border on the edge outside, kind of a bump. So this is a sign that you have really a creamy consistency, and maybe it's a bit too creamy, and at some point you will need to add a bit more water so it's easier to move on the paper. I want to add a shadow on this tree, and for this I have mixed a darker value of the same color, and it's still quite fresh, the first layer, and I'm applying cream on cream, so the two colors will merge really easily. All I have to do at the end of the shadows is have a blending with a clean brush with clean water and rub very gently to integrate the two colors together. And this can only work if you have a creamy consistency. And creamy consistency comes only from a fresh tube. If you want to reactivate your dry palette, it's possible. Of course, you can just add water and the pigments will come back to life, so to speak. But you won't never get enough paint to achieve a nice and smooth consistency. And if you want to rub, it will lift the color below. It will make an ugly mix and you will never get an even surface. No, I'm using a very liquid mix, kind of a milky consistency, so to speak. I'm making the background of this tree. So you can tell right away there is no bump on the edge of the shape, and also the coverage is not great. You can see a lot of the white of the paper and the paint is not even. And then when I want to add the shadow with my darker color, it's going on top of it quite nicely. There is no problem so far, but the trouble is coming when I want to get my clean brush and mix the border of the two colors. So does it make sense now? If you find the video helpful, please put the like button. It's really helpful. Thank you. The pink tree is sitting on top of the green and the dark green trees, and I want to have a very nice border with no white between the two shapes. So using a creamy consistency allows me to get this nice bump on the edge of the shape so I can cover easily the distance between the two shapes. And now with my very thick paint I can cover the slight mistake I made with my green paint. The thing is not to rub too much, so you don't lift up the green below. But as my paint is thick, it really should not happen so far. If you want to cover a large area of the same flat color, you really need to make a mix that is enough That is quite big because you always need more than when you think, and if you don't get the right color at the first time, you won't be able to mix the exact same color. That's almost impossible. Believe me, I've tried. So mix a lot of it, and really enough, because you don't want to thin your paint while you are covering the shape. Gouache is drying quite fast, but when your mix is too liquid, it's not drying as fast as you think. So if you place another color next to it, they will bleed into each other. Maybe this is something you want, but if you want an even color, that's not a good thing to do. You have to wait until the shape that you are placing the paint next to it is totally dry. And also, if you get a milky consistency, you will have trouble with an even surface. And also, maybe you didn't mix enough, so you're trying to add more water, so you get enough paint to cover your shape. But believe me, it's the wrong idea. You should make a complete new mix with enough paint. Because here I'm really getting more and more water into my mix, and it's getting really nothing really cool. Something I hear a lot is I get muddy colors when I'm layering gouache. Alright, so first thing, you need to wait for the first layer to be totally dry. It may take a minute or two, so place your finger on top of it and check if it's really dry. And also, you want to have your second layer on top that is a bit thicker, or at least the same consistency that the layer below. Because if you are using something liquid on top of something sticky and dry, you will lift up the color. So first thing. Second thing, you want to limit the number of brush strokes you are placing on top. So just one brush stroke is ideal if you can, of course. If you are placing a layer of liquid under and you don't wait for it to be dry before you apply another layer on top, whatever the consistency, you will have trouble because the color will fuse into each other, so the edge won't be clean, and also you will lift up the color below. If you look at the branches in the middle, you can see the green of the tree. The same thing applies if you want to have pointy shapes with the tip of the brush. It's really easier to do with a thick consistency because it will keep the shape that you placed. It won't bleed on the paper. Although creamy consistency is not always the good way to use gouache. Here I want to add very fine lines on top of the tree. It's very dry. I'm using a quite liquid paint because it is very thin and it's very difficult to get thin lines with creamy consistency. So you have to adjust the amount of water in your mix until you get something that is fluid enough to move on the paint and not so liquid. Also, a very important thing is don't rub. Just place one single brush stroke and you won't lift the color below. If you want to paint dots, you can go even more liquid. It will be easier to achieve the round, nice shapes. So just dip the brush in your paint and place a tiny touch of paint. Don't rub. Because if you rub, because you're trying to make a circle, for sure you will be lifting the color below. And here, even more because the color below is so thin that it will be reactivated very soon. Also, you can tell that I can see the pencil under the pink layer because it's so thin that it's not hiding my pencil, even if it was very light. And here you are, the two next to each other. On the left is the creamy one, so to speak, and on the right is the more liquid one. So from a distance, it looks quite okay, but if I'm getting closer and I show you some texture, you will see the difference. This one is really opaque, with almost even surface, because I don't like even surface, but don't hate. And this one is really more liquid and you can see the white of the paper through the paint. This is very good if you are doing watercolor, but maybe if you are doing gouache, this is not exactly what you want. And maybe you're not convinced yet. I've made 2 videos for you, and maybe you need them to see more about gouache consistency and be really convinced about it. We need to talk. And she agrees. You need to use the creamy consistency of gouache if you want to get the most out of it. You okay?